Hello, record nerds of the internet. Recently, I did not one, but two record shows in the matter of 6 days. And I had never done a record show before, and I'm going to talk about it and give you some tips if you ever want to do one. Let's go.
Six in the morning.
So I've mentioned a couple of times on this channel that I used to own a record store. I owned a record store for 9 years. But interestingly enough, I never did a record show. And if you've never gone to a record show, it is sort of a chaotic experience where lots of dirty mouth breathers are looking through old, gross, stinky records, trying to find that one record they've been looking for forever. Now these, back in the 90s and even into the 2000s, these were really kind of the crucial way to find a lot of records before eBay really came to prominence in the late 90s and Discogs became a thing. Rare records were really difficult to find. You couldn't just go on eBay and find most of what you wanted. You really had to find someone or knew a guy who knew a guy. And so the record show was a way to aggregate all of the people who were selling records into one spot. You would pay your money and you would go there until your brain turned to stew looking for records.
My brain hurts!
It was really a mess. As time has progressed, they've become less chaotic because there's less people there, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing if you're looking for records, bad thing if you're trying to sell records, I suppose, because there's less people to buy them. And you're also competing with not just the people in the room, but the entire world, because everyone has a phone. Everyone can just type in what they have on eBay and look it up, or Discogs, and say, hey, you want $20 for this? I can get this for $15 on Discogs. So let's talk about the two that I went to. The first one I went to was one that I have been going to since the 90s. It is the Buffalo Record Show, run by a guy who runs a record store called The Record Baron. That one is, it's been established. Again, I started going to them in the 90s. I don't know when he actually started doing it. He may have started doing it even into the 80s or 70s. I don't know. He's old. He's as old as my uncle, who's pretty old. He's a boomer, literally, not just figuratively.
Okay, boomer.
Thank you.
And so the reason I decided to do this was I went to the record show out of curiosity to see what they were all about in 2023. And I saw a buddy there who used to come into my record store selling some records. And he was there with another buddy, and we were talking. And they were like, oh, don't you want to sell records again? And I said, no, not really. And then as I hung out longer, I was like, well, maybe I do want to sell records again. And then I noticed that he didn't have a whole table's worth of records to sell. So I asked him, like, hey, next time they do this, do you want to split a table and I will sell records and you can sell records on your half? And he's like, that's a great idea, because it cost $70 to set up a table there. So that's a pretty big chunk of change if you're selling, I don't know, $100 in records. You're going to be losing quite a bit of money. So you might be wondering, like, well, so what kind of records did you sell? Did you sell your own records, or did you sell new records? Did you go out and buy collections? Well, what I've been doing, and since I knew I was going to sell records at record shows, is that I had been watching internet sales. If you're really got your ear to the ground, you can find some really amazing deals out there where different websites are blowing out stuff for 50% off a lot of times. And so that enables you to, like, maybe pick up a record for $10 and then charge $15, and now you've made $5, which is about what you might expect for a record store to make on a new record that they're selling. Spoiler alert, guys, owning a record store, the margins are really thin, between what you can buy it for wholesale and what you can sell it for. So if people are selling records at a 50% off sale, they are losing money on those records because they paid way more than that for them. So if you're buying them at 50% off retail, you're getting them for cheaper than a record store can get them. I also combed through my record collection and grabbed like records like, oh, I don't really care if I listen to this, or like if I have doubles of stuff. Like if you've watched my channel, you might see that I've done different shootout videos. So I grabbed the ones that I thought were the less than copies, and I threw those in my box. And you know what? I actually made videos, and I will show them here so you can watch those. And you can see what was in my box for the first record show. Not going through those. Got a Discord box set, some books. Is anyone going to have a signed Robert Williams book? I don't think so, but you never know. And some UHQRs. Okay, so now that you've watched that, you kind of understand what I was selling there. So pricing, like I said, if you're buying it for less than what a local record store can get it for, that means you could sell it for less than what a local record store sells it for. So the way that I priced stuff is I would look on Discogs, look at like what people normally sold it for. You can look at what the record has last sold for, and then look at condition, like if it's new or if it's used, what kind of condition that's in. And then I would price it below Discogs price if it was a used record. And if it was a new record, I would usually charge around Discogs price. Because here's the thing. A lot of times on Discogs, you can get records cheaper than retail, sometimes by a lot. So your local record store really has to go up against selling records against people willing to take a loss, like Pop Market. If I was running a record store, Pop Market would be my number one enemy because they're just willing to sell records for
Nothing.
I don't know if it's a loss because I believe that they also do distribution. So they're getting them at even lower wholesale than what record stores are getting them at. And then they're undercutting those record stores. So it kind of blows if you're a record store.
But you know who sucks most? You do.
And then the other thing, so when I was pricing them, I would price at $5 increments. And that's for really two reasons. One, I didn't want to have to have a whole bunch of singles and worry about singles. If you've ever worked retail, singles are the bane of your existence because you're always running out on them. Like if you sell something for $15, it's easier to give them a $5 than if they buy something for $16. Now you have to give them 4 singles. Plus, it really simplifies the math so I can do it in my head on the fly and I don't have to have issues adding stuff up. Because I don't know about you, but I was never the kid. You ever do that in math class where you would go from kid to kid and it would be like a contest to see which kid could answer the math question? And I never got past the first round because my brain just shut off. So if I have to add 15 plus 45, I can go, oh, yeah, that's 60. But if I was adding 18 plus 7, I'd be like, I don't know, man, just take it. I don't know. Let me get out the calculator. So that would be my first tip, is to price in $5 increments. Here's my second tip, so you don't have to remember stuff. This is an example of a record that I sold. This was not in the video that I showed because this was added later. But so I created these labels here where I put the band name, the title, and then the most important, like information that would be important to you if you're looking at the record to buy it. Now, so this information is right here as well. A lot of records don't have this sort of thing, especially if it's used. It's not going to have this information. And then, so if it was a new record like this, it would be in green, and I put new. And then if it was a used record, such as the Smiths record, it's in blue. But I don't know if you can see that because this is a green record cover, and it might be making that look green. But it's blue. So if I'm flipping through this, I can differentiate fairly quickly. Oh, this is a used record. Oh, this is a new record. Well, so I did this because I want the person to have as much information as possible when they're making their buying decision. It means that I can shut my brain off a little bit and not try to rely on my memory or my phone to look up what pressing it is. And then secondarily, it might curtail any conversations I don't want to have because I have social phobias. And so if I don't have to talk to people, it's better for me because I have issues. Here's another tip. Take as many payment options as you can. You would be shocked at how many people are like, do you take credit cards? Like, dude, do I take credit cards? I'm sitting in a Knights of Columbus hall selling records out of a box. This isn't Macy's. Like, no, I can't swipe your credit card. But if you take Venmo or PayPal or cash or whatever else, if you can give people those other payment options, you can make a sale that you might otherwise miss out on. I actually missed out on a sale because my Cash App, which I have used, but not frequently, when I went to log into it, I couldn't log into it because it wanted to do multi-factor authentication because I hadn't logged into it in a long time. Anyway, so I lost out on the sale because I couldn't get that going in the environment of a record show. So not only should you have all of these apps available to you, you should make sure that you've logged in successfully and you're able to accept payments. So that way you're not doing it on the fly and thinking, oh my God, I can't get this to work and this guy's waiting to buy this record. I don't work well under that pressure, and I think that most people probably don't work well under that pressure. So that's a huge tip from me, again, since I lost money on that. And then the other thing, another tip, is bring as much different stuff as you can. In those boxes, you may have saw that I brought some books. And like, who's going to buy books at a record show? Well, I brought 3 books, one of which was a $100 book signed by Robert Williams, which I didn't really expect to sell, and it didn't, but I thought it was cool in case someone really was into Guns N' Roses to be like, oh, this is the guy who did the Guns N' Roses cover. I want to see more what he has done. But the other 2 books actually sold. So, I mean, people will buy stuff. And then the other thing, too, is I didn't bring any 7 inches. I don't normally buy 7 inches anymore unless it's something I really want. So I don't really think about 7 inches all that much. However, while I was at the first record show, there was a guy with a Lagwagon hoodie on. Lagwagon was like a pop punk band. And I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna be a sale. Because I have a lot of punk stuff. And then he took off his Lagwagon hoodie, and underneath was a Hot Water Music shirt. And I was like, oh, this is definitely gonna be a sale. And then so he came over, and I'm like, oh, I got tons of stuff for you. He's like, do you have any 7 inches? And I said, no. And he said, oh, I'm only looking for 7 inches. So for the next show, I went through and I grabbed a bunch of 7 inches out of my 7 inches and put those into the bins. So that way I could have more to sell to people. And I did sell some. So 7 inches, don't forget about those. Weird stuff that's music adjacent, don't forget about that. Like if you have some stuff that you're like, oh, this is music adjacent, and you have room in a box, throw it in there because you never know what someone might need. Here's another tip. If you have to bring stuff and put it on the floor, put your worst stuff down there that you really don't think anyone's going to buy, because if you have 100 people looking at your booth, maybe 20 of those people are going to look at stuff on the floor. Most people don't want to bend over and look at stuff. I don't want to do that. If I see something on the floor, I'm like, that stuff is dead to me. I don't care what's in there. I'm not bending over. Another thing, too, is if you have all your records in Discogs, take pictures of them as you're selling it, so that way you can remove it from Discogs when you get home. Otherwise, you're going to have holes in your Discogs where you're like, where is this record? I used to have this record. Where is it? Why can't I find it? Well, it's because you sold it 3 years ago and you forgot to take it out of your Discogs, dummy. I do that all the time. I am the dummy that I was talking about. Another tip that I would suggest is getting real record boxes that you can stack, because at the end of the day, you have to bring these records home and you have to put them somewhere. And so you're going to have to store them in your house in like a closet or somewhere. And if you could stack them, that makes your life easier, and it's going to make whereas if you just get boxes from U-Haul that are 12 inches wide and you put all your records in there, you can't stack them. So I don't know how you're going to store those things unless you have shelves somewhere that you can put them on. I bought these BCW boxes, and I kind of wish that I had gotten the Sleeve City boxes since they seem a little bit more rigid and stout. So if you're looking for boxes, I would go to Sleeve City. They do coupons a lot of the times that you can get stuff a little bit cheaper. So I would do that. I would also make sure that you bring sufficient cash to do change. Now, I had mentioned that I only price in $5 increments to reduce the amount of cash that I need to bring, but you still need to bring cash. And not just $5 bills. Bring like a 10 and a 20, because someone might give you a 50 and you're selling a record that's 20 bucks. Now you have to give them $30 back. So if you just bring 5s, well, you've depleted a lot of 5s. And if you just bring 20s, well, how are you going to make change? And then no one has change. Like the people next to you, they don't have change. So try to bring some change, because it's going to be a pain in the ass. I assure you it's going to be a problem. And then finally, for my last tip, I'm going to hit the split a table tip from the beginning of this to bring it full circle again. I can't express to you how important that would be to being successful and having a good time selling records at a record show if you're new to record shows. Not only does it lessen your costs, but there's a lot of other advantages to it. It gives you someone to talk to throughout the day. It gives you someone who you can say, hey, can you watch my stuff? I have to go to the bathroom. Or, hey, can you watch my stuff? I'm going to go look at that table over there. Or, hey, can you watch this stuff? I'm going to go grab food. It makes the day go by quick. I don't think I would want to do a record show by myself without having someone else there. Even if I wasn't splitting a table, I think I would force my kid or someone to come with me and be like, hey, you have to come so I can do other things so we can make this day less horrible, because it is a lot of stuff going on. And if you can have someone else there that'll have your back, it'll make your day a lot more smooth. and it's a little crazy and a little hectic and a lot exhausting. So if you can minimize all of that, you'll be better for it. So again, split a table. It's not going to be a problem because you're not going to have enough stuff in the beginning to fill up a whole table. Unless you do, and then bring someone or pay them, because it's going to make your life easier. So those are my tips. What tips do you have? Have you ever done a record show? Put them down in the comments below. I would love to have more tips, because I plan on doing this again going forward. I'll probably do this in perpetuity as just a little side hustle. I'm not making a lot of money. I made a little bit of money, but not a ton. The second show that I did with a guy named Eric Richter, who I talked about on this channel, who used to be in some bands. And I kind of weaseled my way into splitting a table with him at this show because my other buddy who I did the other show with wasn't doing this show. And he makes about $1,000 every show, but he's only selling his records out of his collection, out of his personal collection. So he's selling 80s and 90s presses of stuff that people are looking for, whereas my stuff is a little bit more limited. But again, it all depends on what you're selling and who you're selling to and if those people happen to be there. So I would recommend, again, here's my, maybe this is my last tip. Again, diversify as much as you can. Bring as much different types of music as you can. Anything that someone might buy where I can make a little bit of a profit so I can cover my $40 or $35 and then put some money in my bank at the end of the day, I am all about it. I learned very quickly in opening a record store, if you just sell the stuff that you like, you're going to go out of business super fast because there are not enough of you to go around. So those are all of my tips. If you have any tips, put them below. If you like this video, like, subscribe, click all those bells and buttons. Let's go. See you next time.